I'm going for. Do you know what those are?
No. What is that?
Fireworks.
Oh.
Fireworks. Because it's like a new year.
It is a
New
new year,
of
man.
the Record Shepherd's
The
2023.
The Record Shepherds are back.
you thought we were gone.
You thought we were gone. You're like, oh no, my career is not going to take off because there's no new Record Shepherds episodes.
It wasn't reliant on this advice, this weekly advice, and all of a sudden off the airwaves, but not for long.
Yes.
And for those of you watching us on YouTube via the gift of YouTube, you will see, ta-da,
Ta-da,
ta-da. Brand new studio.
Brand new studio. Lots of changes when it comes to the Record Shepherds, and the Shepherds have been regrouping. We've been holding meetings, and we've been trying to figure out the best way to give content to you guys. So we're super thankful for the support that we have so far, and we just can't wait to continue making new episodes for you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be a good year ahead, and we've got some guests lined up, and we've got some episodes we want to talk about lined up, and yeah, I think we do have a new studio. It's a work in progress in terms of our set, but that's the beauty about it. It doesn't have to be all at once.
It's like a new apartment.
Yeah, you just furnish it as you're going along, kind of thing. We've got a couple of ideas, sort of creative differences on what sort of curtains we're gonna get.
If we even have the audience, if there's fan art, we'll take some submissions.
Yeah, that'll be class. You know what we're thinking? We're thinking of getting like a piece of art for behind us here of like the Record Shepherds logo, the little alpaca with the shades, and I've got an idea in my head. If anyone's good with oil paintings or acrylics, might have a little piece for you.
Hit us up.
Yeah, a little commission for you.
I was never good at art in school. Were you?
I was okay. When I got into it, but like I was never happy with my particular style. Everyone's got their own style, and I used to say I couldn't draw, but then my sister, who's very artistic, she said, "No, you've got it's an amazing style. Like, you definitely can draw." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I just thought this was
validation.
Crap. Yeah, but
yeah, I was always terrible. I mean, I'm left-handed. I just feel like the world. I mean, my handwriting is garbage. I just feel like the world is not made for us
left-handed people. But you will live longer statistically.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang, and you're tall. They say tall people don't live that long.
Oh dear. Oh well. That's I got to pack it in.
Yeah,
pack it in, and I have been packing it in.
I was gonna say last week. Yeah, how you been? How you just got back from a big old trip? Tell us about that.
Yeah. I flew in back to New York overnight on the red eye. And a lot of people are like, "What? I never do red eyes." But it's because I was out in LA for the sort of pre-Grammys week.
Fancy.
Yeah, fancy. And I have some family live out there. My brother and his wife and their little dog live out there. And it was kind of like, well, if I get the late flight, that means I've got the whole weekend to hang out and catch up with them, because I don't see them too often, obviously, with them being out there. But and it was great. I had a great day. Had a great weekend and a great week, but not a lot of sleep.
So we were talking, and before we dive into the Grammy stuff, you were expressing to me how different you felt LA and New York are, and the way that you were describing it made it seem like you didn't have a good time. But
no, it's not that at all. Not that at all. It was just I've been to LA many times, and but I was sort of my brother and his wife, they bought a property kind of over up in sort of eastern part of LA, and just your setup, going from there just straight back to Williamsburg, the setup could not be more different,
right?
Just in terms of you're in pure residential suburbs effectively, there, and there's nothing around other than houses, whereas walking down the street in Williamsburg was that 6 little chic little indie coffee shops in one street, and everything's around you, people are walking past you, it's buzzy, it's just totally different.
So was it like a refreshing difference, or did you feel sort of out of your element?
No, it's I love visiting LA, like that's what I'm just trying to work out. Like, is it just a place I like visiting, or could I see myself out there at some stage on a more permanent basis?
That's the age-old question.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially when you work in the music industry and you have friends that have sort of moved back and forth. You kind of, there's always that dynamic of people are very opinionated for some reason with like, don't move to LA, they're all fake out there, it's like traffic, blah blah blah. It's like, why would you live in New York, it's dangerous, da, da, da. And the truth is, you can make any place your home. You just got to figure out how to adjust.
Totally. You have to be prepared for that change, I would say, because very, very different environments.
So you were partying it up with all the celebrities. You and Jay-Z were at the Rock Nation brunch. You were getting drunk. How was that?
I went to a few parties. And that's what it's all about out there. I feel like the Grammys were obviously on the Sunday night at the end of the week, and that's what everyone's there for, in theory, or that's what the whole week is set up around. But really, I would say, all the best stuff happens before that. Like that's just
definitely.
it's there now as sort of just as a week where the industry gets together, and it's obviously people are meeting each other, and it's a great time with everyone in town to have those meetings and have those catch-ups. You fly out there and you can do 10 times the catch-ups you would be able to do in any given week, and sort of like move things along, etc. So I did have that. I did have like people like blowing up my phone while I was at parties saying, right, let's go outside and talk this deal through. And
wow.
Yeah, 2 deals that happened on, and moved them along as well, so got some stuff agreed, I feel. So
we were talking, and I mean, the Grammys itself, like the televised Grammys, is one thing, and at this point when you watch it, it is really like a concert. They spend a lot in terms of the production, and just the performances are amazing, and so there's that. But like you said, I think people forget the music industry is an industry, and just like how you might be like a dentist and go to a dentist convention, in Las Vegas or something. Like there's an industry surrounded events that happen during Grammy weekend. That's, like you said, where you go to meet people, collaborate, get deals done, and it's a real personable.
And have a bit of a, it's important to have a good time as well, and it's sort of it's a celebration of the music industry. I feel like Grammys week, and you've got these parties, and people are there to catch up, but also to have a good time, and you're kind of running around the city a bit, and it was good, and there's some pretty dope parties as well. I went to Rita Ora was doing like a party to sort of like announce her, or sort of like celebrate, I guess, her return. She's got an album coming out later this year, and like a new single, which is great, and she put like a little performance there, and it was very Hollywood, the whole thing. Like it was in the backdrop was Chateau Marmont, so it was a private residence, and they're like right underneath Chateau Marmont, which I'm sure the listeners know of, but very famous sort of music industry or Hollywood hotel, where like just a lot of stuff's going on there. So like Hollywood folklore. But anyway, it was there, and man, it was a private party, but it was star-studded.
Really?
It was pretty incredible, actually. Like from a little Northern Irish boy growing up in the countryside of Northern Ireland to like a party like that in Hollywood. It's kind of surreal. But very cool, and that was fun and stuff. But it's sort of some of the bigger parties that the labels are throwing and things like that, and there's dinners, and like charitable dinners, like Music Cares is a big one, and it's just a great week for the music industry, and a bit of a celebration. And then of course, you got the Grammys themselves on the Sunday night, sort of topping it all off.
Did you get a chance to actually go to the ceremony, or you were?
No. I am not quite top brass enough for that. So one day we'll see.
You can stand outside and we'll party after.
No, but I know I was so. That's one thing. Because of the fact I knew wouldn't be going, and I needed to get back here for Monday morning. I missed the Grammys as they happened, but I was able to catch up on some of the headlines this morning and
lots
see
of headlines.
As always.
Yeah, and I know you watch clips, but I had the opportunity to actually watch the entire show. It was a really, really good night. I loved most of the performances. Even from Bad Bunny opening up the ceremony. I mean, if you didn't already know that the Latin takeover is here, it's just
you do. Opening up the Grammys, Bad Bunny, most streamed artist of the last year in the world.
And
incredible.
There are other Latin Grammys, but to be able to take that genre and his style of music and bring it to this stage in the United States is in the way that he did it too. Like, really honoring where he came from and the type of music. It was a beautiful thing. We had some amazing performances. Harry Styles performed, Lizzo performed. She always kills it. So it was a star-studded event as always. A lot of great performances and a lot of big winners as well.
Yeah, a lot of big winners, and it's a spectacle in itself,
50th anniversary of hip hop. They celebrated at the Grammys, which was amazing to watch.
Yeah, like a lot going on, and like the performances themselves. I feel like a lot of it now is about those performances,
Definitely.
And people really look forward to those. And then the outfits and everything, and there's always a little bit of scandal,
right?
That surrounds it, and like that just adds to the entertainment. So
definitely,
it's good TV. It's good TV, and pretty inspiring.
Yeah, I would say definitely my favorite part was the 50th anniversary of hip hop celebration that they did with the just sort of montage of artists and performances.
Yeah,
I think that in America, we have a lot of these genres that to us are really, really old, so it's sort of hard to put it in perspective, that
something like blues, for example.
Like blues or like rock, like any of these genres where there's so many different categories, and hip-hop is a young genre, and I think a lot of the struggles that hip-hop goes through is due to the age of it, but it's like there's so much room for growth and potential, and, I mean, it's still the dominant genre in the industry, so... for being able to actually see the progression of where hip hop started versus where we are now and seeing all of those artists on the same stage was beautiful.
Yeah, so it was curated by Questlove.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? And did a good job of it. There was just some, like, the who's who of hip hop.
Yeah.
Basically.
And Questlove did an amazing job. It takes a real talent to be able to map all of those songs out because, they did a lot of songs. I think over 30, 40 songs in a short time span, and you need to program all that music, do rehearsals. That's a lot of effort to go through.
Yeah, that's impressive. As I say, I saw some of the clips, and I'm looking forward to. I'm gonna watch it all through. To be honest,
yeah, recommend it. But we can go on to the big winners of the night. So
the big winners, and I think there's 4 general categories, as they call them, right? Like there's many categories now. I think this year we're up to 91 different categories, which is it's a lot. So you don't see them all on TV, of course, but you got the 4 main ones. So we got record of the year, song of the year, best new artist, and album of the year.
Right,
which is essentially that's the big one, right? That's the crown jewel kind of thing.
The crown jewel. And if you've been listening to the Record Shepherds for a long time, you already know the difference between a record and a song.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, you can check back on previous episodes to figure out what the heck I'm talking about.
Yeah, you should definitely do that.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
We got like song is basically the song. That's like all the songwriters, etc., etc. You know, the people who actually wrote the composition. And then record of the year is more geared to, you know, that takes into account like the artist performance and you know, that's like the producers and everything like
the
that.
actual sound
the
recording.
actual sound recording, yeah.
And I know for a lot of consumers of music, some of those categories can seem a bit confusing. Like, what's the difference between the best performance and best record and best song?
Yeah.
But each of these genres within the Grammy celebration or ceremony has a version of that in their subcategories, whether it's best song, best performance, best record within country music, within hip hop,
And rock,
etc.
yeah, they got it all. And then the general categories basically take all of those into consideration.
Right.
And as I say, album of the year, that's the crown jewel. That's essentially the main winner of the night, and it takes into consideration not just the performer, the artist, but the producer, the mixer, how it was engineered. Like, it's the full team basically on the record. So yeah.
And the big winners.
The big winners were.
So record of the year was "About Damn Time," by Lizzo.
Lizzo, yeah.
Can't go anywhere without hearing that record.
No, you really cannot. And I was about to sing it, but I'll spare
What's
everyone. In a minute,
Okay.
sentimental, bump me up.
The Record Shepherds remix. All right. Song of the year was "Just Like That" by Bonnie Raitt. Great songwriter. I think well deserved. Best new artist. Samara Joy. Brilliant artist.
Yeah.
I think signed out of Verve. Great label.
Yeah, from here in New York City, the
here in New York.
Bronx.
Yeah, exactly.
Jazz singer. So if you haven't heard her, check her out, 'cause big winner of the night.
And then the big winner, album of the year.
Big winner, album of the year, not without some controversy, but we'll leave that for a second. Let's just give him the plaudits he deserves. Album of the year, Harry Styles, Harry's House. Congratulations, Harry Styles. Give you a round of applause for that one.
Harry Styles wins album of the year. And look, all of these categories, there's often a lot of media attention around them, talks about who deserved what. There's a lot of controversy. So maybe we could describe what the controversy is with album of the year this year.
Well,
and most years, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I think first of all, we should say, you know, the little segue here, that although those are the four big categories and the general prizes, there was another big winner on the night. Beyonce.
We can't forget Beyonce.
We cannot forget Beyonce. She was breaking records last night at the Grammys.
Yeah.
She has, I think, now 88 Grammy nominations and broke the record last night. Now has 32 Grammy wins.
Insane.
Unbelievable.
Never seen anything like it.
No, absolutely. So that was history being made, and like, you know, I caught one of her acceptance speech, and I guess it must have been the one to pip the record, because just broke it by one. Okay, like the next most succgesual Grammys.
Yeah, she beat like
winner.
a composer, right? Or like
a
classical.
Yeah, George Salty, I believe. I don't quote me on that, but I should know that. But he's in the classical genre, and she pipped him by one. And her acceptance speech, she did a great job of it. But you could genuinely see that was a big one for her. It meant a lot.
Yeah.
And of course it should. Like, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it was really cool. I think for celebrities, we tend to put them on these pedestals, but when you actually see them speaking, you realize they're just human beings at the end of the day. And as amazing as Beyonce is and how great she is at her craft, it was awesome to see that she was humble in accepting that award, and in recognition by her peers, and just continuing to support the Academy and support the event and gracing everyone with her presence. It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
but also not to forget, she was the first black woman to win in the dance categories. that night for her Grammy. So she won 4 Grammys that
Yeah.
night. She won
In
best
2 different genres,
two
right?
different genres. She won best traditional R&B performance and best R&B song, and then in the dance section, she won best dance recording with Break My Soul and best dance music album with Renaissance.
Yeah, yeah. So that was like very significant, and you know she was nominated for like many like categories, and then ended up like winning 4 right on
Yeah.
the night. So
Yeah, I believe she had 9 nominations.
9 nominations, ends up winning 4, and I think it's fair to say that the you know the bookies, you know the gambling people amongst us would have said that she would have taken the prize for album of the year. I think it
Right.
was expected that it might go to her, and it was
Right.
kind of all set up for that, to be honest with you. The fact that she'd like broken the record,
Right.
she was like had 9 Grammy nominations, and you know she was her album Renaissance was nominated for album of the year. It ended up going to Harry, and you know I'm not saying I don't have an opinion as to, you know, look, he won it, fully deserved at the end of the day, right? So he won it, you can't argue. But during his acceptance speech, he was getting heckled. He was
Yep.
getting heckled by, well, I guess, Beyonce's like fans,
Right.
etc. And so not ideal, because he, like, you know, it's a big moment for him. You know, who knows if he'll ever win that award again.
Right.
And you know, instead of like people just sort of graciously giving him the plaudits and letting him have his moment, he's kind of getting heckled, like not great. But some people, you know, stood up to support him, most notably Taylor Swift and
T-Swizzle.
Yeah, she was then, and of course the two of them used to date, didn't they, like about 10 years ago?
I believe so, man.
Yeah, so they were a thing about 10 years ago, and then she stood up and she was like applauding him, or stood up during his whole speech, even though people around her had sat back down.
Taylor did.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. She stood up and I guess was supporting him in that. But so there's like this kind of, you know, people, a bit of scandal around that, a bit of controversy, and it gets to like, it leads to people into thinking like, is it rigged, or like, oh look, it's a stitch up? What's the votes? Recount the votes,
Right.
essentially,
Well,
you know that.
How many times had Beyonce been nominated for Best Album in her career?
I mean, well, I know she's lost that you know, she's
Right.
like she's like not won it, I think 4 times
Right.
now, you know.
Right. And so all that to like, as a fan, you know, if you don't necessarily know how the process works, I think it's completely understandable when you see like an artist who has been at least a part of my musical journey for 20 years, right? She's been dominating, you know, the charts and the hearts of people who love her for years. And with 80, like we just said, 88 nominations, 32 Grammy wins, and has lost in the category 4 times over her 20-year career. As a fan, you could ask, okay, what's going on here? What is the process? And with this controversy, like, maybe we could take the opportunity to educate some people or remind some people of how Grammys actually work and how people are submitted and voted for and accepted of these awards.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Sort of like maybe let people know a little bit about how they, you know, how the whole system works, kind of thing.
Right.
But probably even to sort of back it up a little bit,
Mhm.
you know, the a little bit of the history of the Grammys. It's
Yeah,
been
be
around,
good.
you know, the Gramophone Awards, aka the Grammys. Have been around since 1958. 1958 was the first one.
You were about, what, 16 then?
I was just a young whippersnapper then, yeah.
Yeah.
And like at the time there was the Academy Awards, right, the Oscars, and the Emmys, and that was to recognize the stars of film and TV.
Right.
But there wasn't anything at that point as like an awards show, especially for the music industry. And during the 50s in Hollywood, it was the Hollywood Walk of Fame project, you know, with all the stars, and that brought like a sort of renewed like spotlight to not just film and TV, but also like the recorded music and singers and songwriters, etc. And so it was around that time, 1958, that the first Grammy show went on. I think like a lot less categories then. I think it was under. Like we had 91 today, and it does increase every year, it seems. But back then, 28 categories.
prizes.
Yeah.
And just to keep in mind, the Grammys or the Recording Academy is like any other institution. It evolves over time. So you could imagine this institution in the 50s, not exactly the most progressive categories. Like in doing our research, we realized that at some point there were even gendered categories for the Grammys. So, men and women weren't even competing in some of the same categories at times, which was really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So it's evolved and it continues to evolve. And
speaking of, evolving, and we were talking earlier about the 50th anniversary of hip hop, rap was not even recognized as a category until 1989, and rock was only recognized 9 years before that in 1980 as a completely separate genre.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's 1980 for rock.
Seems a little late.
Yeah, it does seem a bit late, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and it puts it in perspective. I think because rock is an older genre, and I guess in our culture, it's I think established more in people's minds, unfortunately, which causes people to not remember that at some point this genre was also considered just like anti-suburban, maybe middle American. It was very much like the rebellious genre.
Oh yeah,
and so you're dealing with that, and so you could argue that affects the sort of music industry recognition of a genre, similar to hip hop.
Yeah. So, but anyway, like that's a little bit just about the history and how the categories have progressed. But in terms of the structure and how it relates to voting, walk us through that, Tim, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so the Grammys are determined by voters in terms of who is nominated in a category and who wins in their category. I was reading some articles the other day, and they identified about 12,000 current voting members, actual people who can vote in these categories that are members of the Recording Academy. Mm-hmm. So you may ask, okay, what is a voting member? Okay, so you have to be invited into the Recording Academy, which is the governing body of the Grammys.
Yeah.
In order to be invited into a voting member, you have to be, let's see here, an artist, producer, musician, or somebody who is firsthand involved in the creation of music and actively participating in making music currently. Mm-hmm. So you get 2 letters of recommendation, and you also submit a portfolio to the Academy that shows these are the tracks or
your work, basically.
The work that I've been credited to.
Yeah.
And whether as an actual musician or a producer or a songwriter in any of those specific categories, you submit your portfolio and they say this is essentially good enough or it's not good enough, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is really interesting because that could be subjective too, right? It's like what you may have a body of work, but who's to say it's credible enough for you to be voting in these categories or be a member of the Academy?
Yeah. Well, I mean that is. Yeah. Ultimately, you have to draw the line somewhere.
Exactly.
So, it's not no one's stopping you putting your music out. It's just there's got to be some parameters about whether you can vote on something that's fairly significant.
Exactly. So currently there are about 12,000 members who actively meet that criteria, who are a part of the Recording Academy.
Yeah. Who actually want to do it.
Who actually want to do it, right?
Yeah.
And there are other different members of the Recording Academy that aren't voters, but we don't have to talk about that now. We can just talk about the voting members. So that's the voting members. Now we talk about how is your music eligible to be considered for nomination and to win categories at the Grammys.
Yeah. Because it's not just although obviously a lot of this music does end up out there, it's not just a case of if your music's been released that year, it's considered. It has to be submitted.
Right.
Right.
Has to be submitted. So the music has to be available for sale between October 1st of the previous year and midnight September 30th of the given Grammy year. So we can use, let's say, October 2021 as the example for the initial phase to enter or to release your music, and then September 30th of 2022 would be the cutoff.
Yeah.
And then the Grammy Awards happen on February of 2023.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So if you release your music October of 2022, you would not be eligible for the Grammys and for that up and coming Grammy.
I love that. Right. So that's all. Now we're basically just telling our listeners here, you know, the listeners of the Record Shepherds, make sure you get your Grammy nominations in time.
Make sure you get your Grammy nominations in time. So that's one criteria. The next criteria is that, and bear with me a little bit, but the song or the body of work has to actually be submitted either by a reputable organization, so in this case like a label, an independent distributor, or a member of the Recording Academy itself. So you don't have to be signed to a label, and I think that's important to note, to be submitted to the Grammys. If you are an active member in the Recording Academy and you distribute your music independently, you can submit that music to the Grammys as long as it fits within that time frame and it's being sold in the United States through reputable stores and it meets that criteria.
Yeah. And it's, I guess makes sense, doesn't it? Like it'll be the artists who are signed to a particular label or whatever. It'll be the label submitting them, you know, for consideration. They'll be submitting all their artists and whatever categories are applicable and doing the work for them, doing that admin for them. So that makes sense.
And I actually do want to go back and talk about the difference between voting members of the Academy and professional members of the Academy.
Yeah.
So if you are, let's say, working at a record label, hypothetically, or you're working in the music industry that supports the creation of music, but you are actually not creating the music itself, you're eligible to be a professional member of the Recording Academy, but you are not a voting member.
Yeah.
And the cause behind that is, well, we don't want just people from record labels voting.
We don't want lawyers settling this, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly. So
nightmare.
So in that way, you can sort of see the distinction. So we have the voting members, and the Grammys have been criticized throughout their history of not being as inclusive when it comes to artists who win particular genres. And to their credit, they've sort of responded to that by trying to broaden who the actual voting members are in the Academy. So reaching out to people creating music in different genres, people who have historically not had a voice as a voting member in the Grammys. They're reaching out to the larger music community and inviting people to sort of join the pool, in hopes that diversifying the actual voting members diversifies the people who win the Grammys.
That's good, yeah. And I think it's also a thing that any of the voting members or sort of all of the voting members can vote in the 4 general categories that we touched on earlier, like the big prizes. You know, which don't need to go through them again, but those are the ones that you got to vote for each of those, and then you get up to 15 votes, but limited to your specific area of expertise, sort of thing. So if you're a songwriter, for instance, if you're a songwriter voting member, your votes are going to be primarily related to the songwriting categories. If you're a producer, for example, then it's going to be, you know, more related to the sound recording, like record and album sort of categories. So that's kind of I guess that makes sense. It keeps all the sort of experts focused on the sort of the categories that you want them to be focused on.
And I think a big takeaway for me here, and maybe for our listeners, is that, listen, if you are even an instrumentalist, a recording artist, a producer, an engineer who has a body of work, and you are frustrated by the results of the Grammys in certain categories, then you potentially have the power to change that by becoming a voting member.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as gatekeepish as you might think. You know, I know plenty of people who are voting members at the Grammys, and I'm sure you do as well. And, you know, you find people who are already members, let them walk you through the process, and, you know, you never know. Maybe you submit and you get invited to be a voting member, and that way you can actively be a part of the change.
Yeah, absolutely. And It's actually, it reminds me. I do know people. I know people who've, as I'm sure you do, have like won Grammys, and I'm
Yeah.
not talking about artists. Talking
No.
about, you can. There's Grammy awards for like best liner notes and
Yep.
things like that.
Best
and
liner notes.
So lots of. I mean, it'd be cool to win a Grammy, wouldn't it? Like this, it would just be like, you don't have to be Beyonce or whatever. You can sort of get into the music industry and do other things, and maybe the fruits of your labor
I think there's
land you a Grammy.
yeah, I'm pretty sure there's podcast categories as well. So maybe
Oh, there
maybe
you
you'll
go.
see,
Yeah,
you'll see
yeah.
us there one day. The Record Shepherds.
Now's a good time to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a 5-star rating on all the podcast sites.
Yeah, but speak on the controversy note. I know you had pulled up something regarding some recent controversy that the Grammys had experienced.
Yeah. I mean, like, it was just a story. Like, the former CEO of the Recording Academy, Deborah Duggan, had after she resigned, like, came out to say that there was a whole load of dodgy dealings going on. Like, I mean, I'm trying to remember the specifics of what she said, but something along the lines of records or works added to the lists of those for consideration for nomination, like, that had not been voted for through the system, by the peers, the voting members system, and that was kind of like basically saying that, like, there's people inside just adding things on, and for whatever agenda suits them, and potentially it being kind of not rigged, but it been pushed in a certain direction to make sure that a particular song or record that they wanted performed on the night was going to be one of the nominees, because that therefore they've got the excuse to play the song, etc., and perform the song.
I mean, it's funny because I've heard artists complain about that too. Like, why would you invite me here to perform essentially for free, right? Because you're getting the advertisement money, you're getting I mean, you're paying for the production, but and then I don't win a Grammy.
Well, I mean,
then not that
I know, but that's pretty obvious to me. It's like, if we just given away the whole game, then you come on and you perform your show, and then, like, everyone knows, all right, well, we know who the winner of that category is now. It's TV at the end of the day. It is it's an entertainment show, so, like, I think there are times where someone's nominated in, like, many different across many different categories, if, like, they'd probably have, like, a bit of a fair point there. If they weren't winning anything, don't get me on if I'm not winning anything. You already know that.
Well, I think and I also want to stress too, like, the Grammys is a sort of institutional celebration of music, and I think sometimes in our criticisms of the Recording Academy, we sort of lose sight of that. But it's good, in my opinion, that we do have an industry of music to help support songwriters and people who actually make the music. Now, there have been, especially in recent years, artists who haven't won Grammys or feel like they haven't been recognized by the Academy in the way that they should. Because of those criticisms, a question comes up of how relevant are the Grammys today to like either established or up-and-coming artists. What value do you really place on these awards, and do they validate you as an artist?
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is they're definitely relevant. I think, like, it's like it depends. It depends also on your, like, category or whatever. Like, there's not that much in the indie space that is relevant. At the Grammys, it's kind of like mostly geared towards the pop world. Now, there's hip hop there, of course, and there's there's classical, etc. But in terms of, like,
televised, like
the televised, exactly, that's what the sort of, like, the meat and drink of it. And when it gets down to the big prizes, traditionally it's sort of more aimed at the sort of pop end of the spectrum. And I think best new act, for example, like, that's worth a lot of money, I think, and just in terms of, like, the amount of doors that's going to open for that artist.
Yeah, I believe personally that an event that brings together the industry of music is very relevant. And like you were talking about, certain deals that you can make and deals that you can close. In that aspect, I think it's super duper relevant. as an artist, if you have an established fan base and you're selling out shows and people are buying your music, and maybe you're not getting that recognition from the Recording Academy, I think that's okay. I think
100%.
I think that's
100%.
okay. But I think for me, especially because I know a lot of producers, engineers, instrumentalists, that winning a Grammy for them, that raises your price in a lot of ways. You charge more for a session, for going on tour, when you actually have that title or that accolade by your name.
Yeah. No, look, that was the second part I was sort of coming on to there. Does it have an impact? Like, it absolutely does. And if you're Harry Styles or any of the up and coming artists, or as you say, a producer gets your first Grammy, that definitely has an impact, and it's definitely significant, and can't get away from that. But that's a totally different conversation to, like, if I'm not winning Grammys or I'm not getting nominated for Grammys, is my music no good? Like, absolutely not. Like, that to me, like, honestly, quite like some of the best music, most of the best music isn't even featured at the Grammys,
Right.
So, like, that's what I mean. It's aimed towards a specific end of the music industry, and all the massive infrastructure that surrounds that. Like, the major labels are not putting out sort of, highly niche indie or blues records, or whatever it might be. Like, it's the sort of the juggernaut is all sort of centered around sort of a few main genres.
Right.
So
definitely. Well, I think the Grammys should try to continue to diversify the voting pool. I think that's super important. All genres and all levels of expertise should be represented, and and
like, continue to watch it. It's evolving, and but gee, I don't know how many more categories can they get. Like 91, I think. Cut it at 100.
Cut it at 100.
100, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to be there for.
Yeah. Well, and you hope that members of the like voting members of the Grammys aren't swayed or influenced, like the situation that you're talking about. Obviously, the music industry is not known for not being corrupt, right? So I guess it depends on where you lie, but I think that voting members probably, when they're considering nominees, because maybe I forgot to say, it's not just one round of voting, right? They have to vote for nominees, and they have to vote for who actually wins the categories. And I believe there used to only be 5 nominees per category. I think they've expanded that, but there's multiple levels. But, they're considering the things that we might consider, whether it's, okay, is this actual quality music? Like, is this elevated in some way? Did this have an impact, potentially a global impact? Was this sold successfully? Is this in, like, the zeitgeist of music culture right now? Like, what is the relevancy of this body of work? And I think, for me personally, if I was a voting member, those are all things that I would consider.
Yeah.
And
100%.
maybe not just sort of record sales or music that's only catered to, like, one specific group of people in the United States. It should be considerate of maybe more than that.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. But well done to all the winners, and
well done to the winners. You'll see us next year at the Grammys, winning best podcast. So can't wait for that.
Yeah, 2025 certainly. Yeah,
2025. There we go. So we have some questions, Jason.
Yeah. So this was a little bit late in getting to some of these questions, but we are starting now to field questions from our listeners, and in terms of, as we've sort of mentioned before, well, it's the Record Shepherds podcast is for everybody, and we hope to sort of like cover points that everyone can learn from, because even if you're working in the music industry, you're usually within one part of it, or one segment of it, and we're trying to cover absolutely everything here, and
Definitely.
like nobody knows it all, like truly nobody knows it all, and we don't know it all.
Exactly.
So a lot of it is us learning from each other, etc. We've got different sort of like areas of expertise, but although it's for everybody, we're primarily aiming at sort of independent artists, musicians, songwriters, producers who are on the rise, and this is meant to be like a resource of like for knowledge and like a sort of like how to, and not a how to guide, but certainly a resource where we hope to shed some light and shine some light on some areas, like one topic at a time.
Right.
So all that being said, we were absolutely delighted to receive our first email from a listener, a chap called Chris.
Shout out to Chris.
Yeah, shout out to Chris. And he's an independent R&B artist based in our very own New York City.
Yep.
And yeah, he's he's got an interesting story, and he's written to us, giving a little bit about his background and what he is into. But he's got a few questions that he's written in, and I think hope to answer a few of them, and Chris will write back to you and answer them all in more detail. But yeah, look, he had a song called Loyalty. He said it was a beautiful song based on friendship with someone in his life, but it's not necessarily the sound that he wants to put out there or wants to be known for as an artist. So the first one was he basically said, look, he's been advised that he shouldn't release any music until he's found his unique sound, like he's found his signature sound. And on top of that, make sure the music is so good that it will disrupt the market. Disrupt the market. And he does add to that he's not a spring chicken. He's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but he's in his early 30s. And he's like, do you agree? Like, I guess he feels like, does he have time to sort of like sit on his music and find the sound and perfect it before he releases? I mean, I'll say it again. The advice was wait until the music is so good
Who
that
gave
it
him the
disrupts
advice?
the music. An independent music marketing agency sort of thing. So what do we think to that? Like, Tim, in terms of should you wait until the sound has been honed to perfection, your signature sound?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I think it's great that he's seeking advice for his music. I think that's a indicator that he's serious about his craft, and it never hurts to sort of get outside advice, because you never know, it might be good, it might be bad. But do I think you have to wait till you have crafted your sound to release music? I think absolutely not. I think sitting on music for too long, treating it too precious, has the negative effect of it being outdated in terms of where you are in your artistry, and you might sit on a track for a couple of years and realize this doesn't really represent who you are anymore. And there's nothing better than to get real-time feedback from your fans when you actually release music.
Yeah.
Because they can tell you whether or not they think this is authentic, or just basically how they respond to it is going to let you know what direction that you need to head in. And it's like you have to test the product in the market, right? It's
totally.
It's like any other product, like the marketing funnel. You have to test the product. You have to try to acquire fans or consumers for you to know if the product is going to work, right? So I don't think sitting on it does much benefit to you. And the age thing, I think there are plenty of artists who are not spring chickens, aren't 16 years old getting famous, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of time, but the journey is going to make your music better and your artistry better. So I don't think you should wait.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's like the other thing is, like, you definitely can sit on music for so long that it basically it's missed its moment. Tastes have changed, what's happening in terms of trends has changed, and if your music is of a genre where trends matter, well then you could have totally. I'll tell you a good example of that is not necessarily tastes and trends in the music, but just in terms of the songwriting and the subject matter. During the pandemic, like artists had all this time on their hands. All of a sudden, they weren't out touring, they weren't out gigging, and everyone wrote a pandemic album. And a lot of people got it out quickly, and that those records were relevant for the time. Now trying to release, we get it, we get at the label here, people we've got this other record, written during pandemic, and we're just kind of like, missed a moment. A lot of that's like the world's ready for a different type of music and
Exactly.
not that sort of same stuff. So
Yeah. Now all that to say though, I will add a caveat. I don't think you need to wait for your music to be perfect. Just have intent with whatever you're releasing. There should be some sort of goal, whether it is to test the market or whether it is to sort of shift whatever your sound is. Just as long, and I'm a fan of writing things down, so just as long as you have intent and a goal, I think it's okay to release the music.
yeah. And in terms of, whether your music, your song is not of the, the same style as what you want to be doing.
Mhm.
I mean, all I would say to that is, you shouldn't be releasing like totally different types of music, 'cause you're trying to find your fan base and you're
Right.
trying to like, sh- build a fan base based on what you're actually putting out there. So if your music's so all over the place, then you're gonna struggle. You need to kind of like hone in to some extent, but don't be too frightened at the start just to get music out there, and because you do need content,
Right. Yeah.
so get it out there. You don't be spending loads of money marketing it if you think it's not what you're really about, but don't be afraid to release it either. So
That's good. Is there
so
another one?
yeah, let's take another one or two. So thoughts when it comes to social media marketing, basically Instagram versus TikTok. So obviously Chris is aware that there are artists whose songs blow up on TikTok, whereas on Instagram, in his sort of experience, it's becoming very hard to gain exposure. So what should he be doing there? Should he be focused primarily on TikTok, or should he do a little bit of both? What are your thoughts on that, Tim, as a music marketer?
Yeah, I think you need to find whatever social media platform works best for you and your genre. However, I am a big fan of utilizing as many platforms as you can, and a lot of digital marketers will tell you that each platform operates differently. Like Facebook is sort of used, for example, as like a banner or like a posting of your content, whether it be shows, so you can sort of treat it as like that official banner for whatever you have coming out, whether it be a show, whether it be new music, etc. Obviously, Instagram and YouTube are coming up with competitive products such as like IG Reels and YouTube Shorts to compete with TikTok. So you can create short form content on those platforms as well. But there's no problem with repurposing content at the same time. Like if you post on TikTok, you can take that same piece of content, take out the watermark and post it on YouTube Shorts and IG Reels as well. So you're just reaching a larger fan base. You have to do the homework on the trends that are going on in those individual platforms and figure out what might be corny to whatever genre or whatever your artistry is and what actually fits. Oh, like, yeah, maybe it is cool to hop on this trend, do a duet on TikTok. Or maybe I just stick to, posting covers on Instagram, short covers, but then again, like I said, taking that content and repurposing it on TikTok. So yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you're trying to do, but definitely use as many platforms as you can, honestly and genuinely, and try to get the biggest audience you can.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you
Yeah.
try to expand your reach? You know,
and
like,
again, just like an understanding, like it's maybe not the best idea to post a 5-minute music video on TikTok, right? But YouTube might be the best platform for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then maybe one last one to wrap up. On a previous episode, Tim, you'd suggested reaching out to playlisters and independent music bloggers. Chris has had a go, but primarily just like searching through Google and things like that.
Right.
Not having much luck. Do you have any advice, sort of like any inside knowledge of how to go about finding these playlists and blogs for artists beginning at the sort of outset, like at Chris's level?
That's a good question. So there are many different ways you can approach this, all of which you have to be really crafty. There's like
crafty tips.
Yeah, crafty tips. So there's like the submit hubs and those platforms where you essentially pay a small fee for these independent curators to review your music and see if they want to add it to, like essentially to their programming. And that's all fine and well, but I'm a fan of doing your own research. So there's a really cool research product out there called Chartmetric. That's Chartmetric, and they have a number of competitors, but I really like Chartmetric. It's almost an industry standard for a lot of people that work in the digital marketing space. And essentially, Chartmetric gives you a profile view of every artist that's ever really released music. They're growing. They're obviously growing their database, but it's pretty much you can find any artist on there. So what I like to do, or what I tell people, is Chartmetric actually provides you a full list of playlists that an artist has ever been on, including user-generated playlists, so not just editorial or algorithmic. So what I like to do is, if you have a specific genre that you operate in, go to Spotify or Apple and look up an artist that you think you sound the most like. If it's, R&B, maybe it's Usher or whatever. Then you scroll down and you can go to fans also like, so you can see other artists that relate to that big artist that you feel like you most identify with, and try to find in that fans also listen to list. Try to find an artist that maybe has less than 500,000 monthly listeners. You can even go smaller than that. And then you take that artist, you put them in Chartmetric, and you see what user-generated playlist has this artist been on that most likely fits my sound, but is a smaller artist than like your big superstars.
Yeah.
And so you could put that in Chartmetric, and again, there are other databases, and then it'll show you a list, and you can look up individual songs too of like what playlist has this artist been on. You can literally download that. It comes in a nice, pretty Excel file for you. And more often than not, some of the more legitimate independent curated playlists have a contact, whether it be an Instagram, whether it be an email. And you can hit up those people and ask them to add your song to their programming, and that's a really good way to find some independent playlists.
That's amazing. That's gold dust. That is gold dust.
Just be mindful of how often you reach out to people, because you don't want to burn bridges. You don't want to seem too, I dare say, annoying. Just get your EPK together, get a one sheet, and make sure your first presentation is your best.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good little section, if we can pick out a few questions from listeners, where it's like anything. It's like if you're thinking that and you're having the same sort of thoughts or questions, chances are there'll be other people having those same questions who could benefit from hearing a little bit of our take on it. So yes, continue to write in. And in terms of socials, Tim, where can everybody find us? All that good stuff.
Yep. You can listen to us on essentially where all podcasts are streamed. You can email us at therecordshepherds@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and you can follow us on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, and the TikToks at The Record Shepherds, as well as our YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe and comment for more content.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we always say, if you're going to be in the New York area, and we'd love to have our first guest of the year in the new studio. So just drop us a line at that email address, therecordshepherds@gmail.com. And let's add you to the conversation. If you got something you want to talk about, then we'd be happy to sort of steer the conversation that way.
Yep.
Drop us comments and likes. Tell us what you think of the new studio. It's a work in progress. Set's a work in progress, but we feel comfortable. We don't have the seafoam green sofa that I so loved.
Yes.
But
change is good.
Change is good. Yeah, change is good, and this is the set for the year ahead.
Yeah.
So I think that just about wraps it up for this episode. So until the next exciting episode, continue to follow the guidance of the shepherds.
Don't be the sheep,
Be the goat.